Okay, moving on to a second starting point. Just wanted to talk you through what I'm thinking when I actually put the original together, because a few people have asked if it's just a case of me taking a bunch of different sized papers and putting them down and saying that's where I start. And certainly there is an element of that to it, but there's definitely a little bit more that goes into the composition when I'm putting together a starting point to share, because I want to make sure that whatever that starting layer is, it's something that will work with lots of different layouts. I would feel really bad if I put a starting point out there and then no matter what you added to it, it didn't come out very well. So let me talk you through a little bit of what's here. I've started with a solid background in this case, because that's this is the one from the Iceland album, so that solid background alternates back through black, white, and gray throughout that whole book. And then, because this is a square page, I've then taken a rather busy repeating pattern and taken it down to a 10 by 10 square. So there's a full inch of black frame all the way around. And that works really well with a busy pattern or with two patterns, like like a heart here and a stripe here, a polka dot and a stripe, something like that, where there's some contrast in the pattern. And that nice big mat helps anchor everything. So instead of trying to make this more like 11 3/4 square, taking it down to 10 inches just gives it that little bit more room around the edge for your eye to relax and take in the quite bold pattern. Then I've added a vertical strip to ground some things, and the strip can go either vertical or horizontal, but the idea is that it's something to bridge the gap between the 10-inch square and the 12-inch square. So something is going to attach that as if it were layered over the top. It is layered over the top. So that the 10-inch square then is no longer floating in the middle of the space. And to help with that, help put it in a natural place, it's roughly a third of the way in. So if you take a page and you divide it like a noughts and crosses grid or a tic-tac-toe grid, then you would have these lines that divide it into 3 vertical and 3 horizontal spots. And whenever you can cover up one of those lines, those imaginary lines that you would draw, then you're going to a place where your eye would naturally look. So this is on, it's not centered on the third line, but it is covering up that 1/3 line, which means it's in a good spot to catch your attention and also create some balance around the page rather than have everything centered or everything a little bit too close to the edge. So that 12-inch paper strip there helps ground everything. And then I've used that same size photo mat that I used before, so that's 4 1/4 by 6 1/4, which gives me just enough room to put one photo on there at a 4 by 6 size and still have a bit of mat around the edge. Then I wanted to get something that, since I've got all this vertical layered up, I want to add something that's horizontal. So I've added these paper strips, and they are just tacked into place so that I can pick them up to put the photo over the top. Or I can put the strips over the photo, I mean. So this then gives me a horizontal element to work with, so I can stack things on top of this. So I could put the title here, or I could add my journaling above this and work down to that horizontal line. Up here I could add more embellishment above this, or I could add the title right here, and all sorts of things like that, where a horizontal line is really, really helpful because it gives you something that everything can rest on. And it's almost as if you're imagining the page is standing up rather than laying flat. And these things are shelves, and then you can put whatever you want on top of them. So this is where I've started, but I've also done this in a slightly different way with a different set of supplies. So in this case, I've taken this idea and I've turned it this way. So the anchoring strip is across on the horizontal, but if you have a look at this, what doesn't work here are then the 2 vertical strips are in very odd places because they're not providing that shelf. If this were standing up straight, then I don't have that shelf. If I have something that's kind of falling off the wall. That doesn't really work. So here, it's the same design with the exception of those 2 strips which have stayed on the horizontal. So I've just moved them to the corners of that same size mat so that I can put the photo or something else here and have a similar but not completely identical look, because this is still going to be balanced. I still have shelves here. Or because they're captions, I may not stack anything on top of them in this case. In this layout, I've also added them on pop dots, while the other layout has everything flat. And just to give you a tiny little hint, when I'm adding pop dots or adding an element on pop dots over the top of a photo, I add the pop dot on the back, but I just don't take the paper back off. So that way it won't get squished. It's still going to stay dimensional, but I don't have that big glob of glue stuck right to the top of the photo. It stays in place since it's in the page protector. It won't be any trouble at all, so it works just fine. Okay, so I'll show you my finishing steps for this layout first, and this is with one 4x6 photo here. So just pick up these strips that I tacked into place. And they're going to overlap over the top of the picture, but that's fine. So to finish this one, I found that I wanted to add the writing here, but the heart paper wasn't going to be a good one to write on top of because there's too many colors and it was just going to compete. So I cut from another scrap of this same paper, those same papers that I started the album with. Then I had some gray with a white grid, so I cut a piece of that to fit here above that shelf, the horizontal line, so that I could add the writing. And I added my title first with a little bit of embellishment too, so then I could just fill the remaining space with my handwriting. And then to embellish, added a little cluster of other paper elements here and a little bit of washi tape. Repeated that washi tape 3 times, so in a diagonal line, and then did the same thing with some colors and shapes. So the pink goes in a diagonal line as well, so that it follows across in that same direction. And there are also 3 of these little asterisks from the black thicker set, and they go in a diagonal line too. And then I just added a few little drops of black ink to give a little bit more texture to this top corner and anchor that down at the bottom corner. So that's everything for that one done with one single portrait 4x6 photo and a kind of medium amount of room to write. With this landscape version, the easiest way would probably be to go with a 4x6 landscape photo, or even a series of landscape photos, because you could do a row or at least 2 here. But instead I'm going to go with a 4x4 square image that's going to live over here in the corner of the photo mat, and then I'm going to have this space to add a little bit more to the design. So I'm just going to go ahead and adhere that up here in the corner. And one thing I really like about this style of design is that it will work with the page filled with more stuff at the bottom in this empty space, or it will work with this space left absolutely plain and everything hanging up at the top. If you do like that idea of adding everything to one area of the page, it works best if you use it just sparingly here and there, because then when you turn the page in the album, it gets it just grabs your attention a little bit more rather than being too repetitive and making you wonder, why is everything always at the top of the page. If you use it just now and then, it works really, really well. The same thing goes with pretty much every corner of the page. If you want to use just the top or just the bottom, the key is to have some variety, and that will keep it all working really well. So what I want to do is add this journaling card up here. I'm actually going to tuck it underneath the photo just a bit, and underneath that title strip there. I'll put the journaling card on an angle. Since this isn't going over the top of the photo, I can go ahead and adhere that pop dot. And then I'm going to add my journaling to the box and a little bit more embellishment, but this is going to, because there's so many colors and bright patterns, it's really going to stay quite minimal and all in this space here, rather than kind of expanding on the diagonal like the other version of this page. So here's that second layout finished. Everything is staying right up at the top of the page. Everything down at the bottom is very, very bare and empty because there's all that pattern, so really it's not all that empty at all. And the embellishment is quite minimal, but it's all really dimensional, so everything is either pop dots or really thick fabric brads, pearl brads, rhinestones, pearls, lots of different things that are coming off the page. So there's still quite a lot going on, even though it's in a small area of the page, and the pieces themselves are quite small. The title is that tiny little strip, and I think that works well as a variety. I wouldn't want the title that small in every layout, but I like the idea of going from lots of titles that are big and bold with stickers to something that's a bit more subdued like that. And then again, I added some washi tape to have something that would repeat from side to side. So on this side and here, both the pink polka dot, but then just the pink stripe on one side to make that longer line of the title a bit more obvious. So here's that first version again with the vertical, and the second version with the square photo. You could use a landscape, you could use a pair of landscapes, you could do two portraits, and you could certainly do two portraits here in this way and then add the journaling either up here in this space. So there's still a lot more options you could use with that same starting point. One more pair to show you, so I'll be right back with that.